we've been focusing on the priority areas for the Alliance from our original agenda. But this meeting is different. This meeting is focusing on a single subject, a single item, which I think is really important to probably all of us in the network, which is around the switchover from analog to digital on telephony. And that has implications quite widely, as we will hear, I think, from our speakers. So we're going to hear from three speakers this morning, and then there will be an opportunity also to have some breakout just to talk about kind of what it means for your own individual organizations. And we're going to hear from Geraint James, who's from BT, that is leading the switchover, from Chris Grant from AbilityNet, who do a lot of training in this area, and also from Sarah, who's from tecCymru, Technology Enabled Care Wales, which is she'll probably tell you all about that. So if we have Geraint, and I couldn't see him on my list, but is he here, Sarah?
Yes, I'm here.
You are fantastic. Good morning, Geraint. Thank you very much for joining us. And if I may, I'll just let you get going. So thank you very much.
No worries at all. Just one moment when I start sharing screens. Okay, so you should all be able to see that now.
Yep, we can. We can see it in not yet in presentation mode.
Yeah, let's try and get this going. In fact, let me try this. Share to there. Share to there. And
no, that's sharing.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. You're off.
There you go. Fantastic. Right. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Geraint James. I'm from BT. I'm the engagement manager on the Digital Voice programme. I cover Wales, the southwest and northwest of England, and Northern Ireland. Today, I'll briefly take you through Digital Voice, the programme and the product. I know Chris is going to do a great job of debugging some of the myths and so on, and I know Sarah will be on shortly afterwards. We'll go through how you guys can help us as well in identifying some of our most vulnerable customers. But as I said, I'll take you through some of the key pointers, if you like, in the programme, and we'll start with that one to start off with. So the big headline is that landlines are going digital. Now, that doesn't mean that the landline's going away. It's just being delivered to you in a slightly different way. Why are we doing it? Put simply, parts of the network are up to 100 years old, but the majority is about 40 years old with the current technology. It's falling over, really. It's very unreliable. You can't get parts for it anymore. The workforce are all retiring who built it and are experts in it as well. And I think there's something like 30% more faults on the network now, and we've had less users than we've ever had before. So it really is crumbling. And we need to move on to a new network, which will see us right for the next few decades at least. We're going to be switching the network off at the end of January 2027. So there's still some time to go, but we are migrating customers right now. I myself, I've been on Digital Voice for about 6 or 7 years, and we're moving thousands of customers every single week. Now, as I said, the landline isn't going away. It's not ending. It's just being delivered ever so slightly differently. So for the majority of customers, it will be a simple move of unplugging your phone from the wall and plugging it into the back of your broadband router, and then you'll have a working phone system. Digital Voice is the BT name for the product. Some other companies are using the same name, but some companies are not. So when I say Digital Voice, and obviously all the information I give today is from a BT perspective, other companies will have their own names for it. On that point, BT are probably the most proactive in this switchover. A lot of other companies are sitting back and watching us do our thing, and not really doing much at all at the moment. So you'll find that we're talking a lot. We're doing a lot of the moving and the shaking in this one because we know a lot of work needs to be done. We've probably got more landline users than others. But as I say, all these slides are from a BT perspective. Some of your own providers, if you're with somebody else, like your Skies, your TalkTalks and whatnot, some of the nuances might be ever so slightly different. So what's the big change, I suppose? Well, a lot of things stay the same. So you'll keep the same telephone number, which is important to so many people. It's the same price and same handsets as well. You don't need to change your phones. Even the old rotary style telephones will work. But that doesn't mean that things don't improve. They most definitely do. So we've got enhanced scam protect features, which can protect you from fraud. I'll go into that one on the next slide. You've got crystal clear call quality. So if on an end-to-end digital phone call, which is what we're on now, you can see that the calls are remarkably improved compared to a standard phone line. And things like three-way calling, there's further features similar to this one as well, which are an added bonus. As you can see, there's many of us on this phone call today. You can do that with digital voice as well. Multiple people on the same phone call, which is a great touch. Onto the enhanced scam protect feature. As you'll be aware, it's generally the older generation who are the predominant users of landlines, with the younger generations using mobile phones and whatnot. They do tend to be more susceptible to scams, to frauds, etc. So free of charge, we've built in with a system called Hire, which is an artificial intelligence model which picks up these fraudulent calls and puts them straight away into a dustbin, if you like. So the phone doesn't even ring at the recipient's end, calls straight into a bin, so you don't even know that they're coming through. If you do have a little screen on your phone as well, it'll highlight calls when it's unsure. It'll say nuisance ? Or it'll say telemarketer ? So you don't even have to answer the calls if you're unsure, or if you do want to answer them, you can answer them and be very, very wary of what you're going into. But again, it's a free of charge system, and I think we've now blocked a couple of million calls since launching this product earlier this year. It's a fantastic feature, and you'll see a noticed reduction in the amount of phone calls you have to answer, simply because it's there, it's screening your calls for you, protecting you from fraud, and that's free of charge, built into the system. There are some other changes as well, some of which are well publicized, and one of those is actually power. So on the existing telephone network, the phone is powered from our telephone exchanges. So if there's a power cut, generators kick in our exchange and they push power down the telephone network and continue the phone network to work. In this new world, the phones are powered from your home. So if there is a power cut, then obviously the phones will not work. Now, there is some resilience products available for customers to purchase if they need, and we do give them away for free to those with additional needs or vulnerabilities. And just to quickly take you through two of these two options. On the one on the left, we've got what we call the hybrid phone, and this is probably my favorite piece of equipment that we do. So the hybrid phone, quite simply, it's a working telephone like every other telephone, but if the power goes, it swaps across and starts working off the mobile network instead. You get a temporary mobile phone number with preloaded minutes already on the SIM card that's built inside, and it will work. You do, of course, need to have a telephone signal off a mobile network to be able to use that phone. There's a very, very intelligent piece of kit, and it's actually got an 8-hour battery life built into it. So it's a very, very clever piece of kit, very useful. On the right-hand side, then we've got what we call the BBU, the battery backup unit. This one here does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a battery and it's there. It will kick in if the power drops. This one will give you a guaranteed talk time of 1 hour, and we're quoting a 4-hour battery in it. It will last a little bit longer than that. We've seen up to about 7 hours that it will last, but we quote 4 hours as a standard. If you're on full fiber broadband, you need 2 of these. However, if you don't, you're just on a standard kind of copper broadband, you just need the 1. Again, to purchase these, on the left, it's £80. On the right, it's £85. But if you are vulnerable or you have like additional needs as such, then you get them free of charge. On that vulnerability piece, we'll go into that now in more depth on the next slide. Come on. There we go. Right, finally. So we know that the landline is obviously an essential form of equipment for some of our customers, those who haven't got obviously mobile phones or the more elderly and they rely on it more than others. So we've kind of been speaking to some of our charity partners who we work very closely with, and we've highlighted 5 groups of customers who we know are going to use this landline more than any others. So going through those, obviously the 5 are the no mobile phone signal. So of course they're going to use their landline. Then you've got the vulnerable customers with additional needs, customers with healthcare pendants or alarms. Those are the the alarms you wear around your neck or around your wrist. So if you fall, press the button, then obviously you can get some help. Then you've got elderly customers who we are classing as over 75, and then you've got the landline only customers who haven't got broadband, so they can't just plug their phone into the back of the router, as I mentioned earlier. We know these 5 different types of customers are more reliant on the landline. So quite simply, we're going to take up extra care and attention and time with these customers. We're actually delaying their migration, and they will be towards the end of our program. We should start to pick up the landline only customers and elderly customers next year, and then the no mobile phone signals customers a little bit after that, and then right towards the end, then we'll be doing our healthcare pendant and vulnerable customers with additional needs towards the end of the program. Reason being we keep those kind of healthcare pendant customers towards the end of the program is because quite simply, we don't know who they are. We can't tell if there is a telecare product plugged into a system or not. And those products are generally reliant on the landline for functionality. And if we don't know that they're there, of course, if we were to remove the landline in its current state, we'd put those customers at serious risk. So we're trying not to move any of those customers when we know who they are. We're working very closely with private providers and local authorities to try and highlight those customers. And Sarah will talk a little bit more on that later. But the other kind of customers, we generally tend to know who the elderly customers are, who the landline only customers are, and who the no mobile phone signal customers are. And we're asking customers who are vulnerable or who have additional needs to self-identify to us. On the landline only front, well, we did announce earlier this year that we actually have a solution for them. So we're not asking them to take out broadband. We're actually going to provide a dedicated landline service to those customers. It works very similar to the current technology that's there. What we'll do is, however, we'll write out to the customer and advise them of a certain date. Let's just say 1st of November. We'd say on the 1st of November, you're going to be without a phone for 1 hour. We don't know what time of the day that 1 hour will be, but on that day it'll be 1 hour. So we're giving the customer advance notice so they can put kind of mediations in place, if you like. Any additional support they need, they can put it in place for that one day. What we will then do is digitize the phone line and then obviously reconnect them. So after an hour, they'll have the phone back up and running, and their overall user experience will be exactly the same as it is now. It'll work in a power cut. They'll be able to carry on using it just like they do now. So for those customers who have a landline only service, they'll be able to continue doing that up until 2030. At 2030, we start to close exchanges around the country. Exchanges are the buildings where we plug in all of our telephone cables and so on. So after that, we'll have to try and find a different solution for those landline only customers. However, it's a great kind of stopgap for those kind of customers who are out there right now, landline only, don't want broadband or can't have broadband for whatever reason. So we're doing that right now. We'll start to move those customers, I think, towards the autumn probably of next year. Finally, what will the journey look like when we select them to move? So first of all, you get a notification that we're going to be switching you to digital voice. It's kind of like a digital voice is coming. This is what it is. The next kind of letter you're going to get then is kind of like a date, and that's very early in the process. So we're going to switch you on this date, and that is your day one. We're going to switch you on this date. That's day one. Day 3, then you're going to get an equipment check. The equipment check, quite simply, is do you need a broadband router, and do you need what we call a digital voice adapter? It comes with pictures, front and back, so customers can easily identify what they need, and they let us know instructions are on the letter of what they need to do. Then, it's a prolonged period of silence, I suppose, and then it's just reminders start to come through. This is happening. Don't forget the date you're going to change. Don't forget the date you're going to change. Don't forget the date you're going to change. A bit repetitive, really, but we want to make sure, hammer home, that the customer doesn't forget to make that all-important cable swap on the day of change. And then, yeah, as you can see, day 28, we place the order. They get an activation email. Day 33, set of instructions on the postcard of what to do. Day 35, we switch them to digital voice. So they come downstairs in the morning, unplug their phone from the wall, plug it into the back of their broadband router, and they're on digital voice. It's a simple cable switch is all it is. And we ask them to do that in the morning because the switchover would be in the middle of the night sometime, generally around about 4 o'clock, something like that, I think is when it generally happens. And that is their journey. Lots and lots of reminders. They even get a phone call as well thrown in there the day before just to kind of remind them as well not to forget to switch. And that's what the journey looks like. So in a nutshell, digital voice is pretty much moving a cable from a telephone into the back of your router. Service, the phone service isn't ending. It's just been digitized and delivered in a slightly different way. And the new service is a fantastic service. It's very reliable. It's future-proofed, and the overall service is better quality, more reliable, as I've said, and future-proofing you up for the next, or I would say probably 40, 50 years, something like that. And it coincides wonderfully with the full fibre rollout from Openreach. And on that point, I will stop and open the floor to questions if anybody has any.
Geraint, thank you very much indeed. We do have a couple of minutes for questions actually. So, and then perhaps you might tell us also how people can follow up with any questions if there are any later. So, any quick questions for Geraint? Could I just ask what kind of proportion of the population in Wales will already have switched over?
Proportion of Wales. Let me think. Sorry, just a moment. I got a painter literally about to hand me a piece of paper. Sorry about this.
Right.
So proportion of Wales, quite a high number. I think we are around about 30%, something like that. It's quite a decent number. What you find is you haven't been able to buy a landline telephone service for since last September, for about a year. So if you make any changes now to your broadband service at all, you're moved on to digital voice. So just through natural progression, people are moving anyway. So if you ring up now and say, I want faster speeds for your broadband, you moved on to digital voice. If you just want to renew your contract, you moved on to digital voice, and that's with all providers. So naturally, people are moving across anyway. So when I say it's about 30% or so, that's just of BT customers, and BT customers are probably about 30 to 40% of Wales. So the 30, 40%.
Oh, 30 to 40%, yeah.
Yeah, you got
Excellent. I'm going to take a quick question from Scott, although actually it's about 5 questions. So do you have to pay extra for the 3-way calling?
Nope.
How do people apply for or make BT aware or request a hybrid phone or a BBU?
Right. So if we know that you are vulnerable, then you can have one by request, simply by calling. But we need to know first of all that you're vulnerable. So you can self-identify by calling us 150. Drop that. 150 from your landline.
Good. The third question I'm going to leave until we've heard from Chris, I suspect. The fourth is, I would like more information on customers who do not have broadband. As a digital inclusion officer supporting tenants who do not have access to the internet, this would be really helpful. So where could our members get more information about that?
From me. Quite simple. I'm the engagement manager. I cover all of Wales. So it's all going to come through me. So I've just popped my email address in there. People can reach out to me. I can send you stuff. But as I say, landline only. If you're like housing associations, the landline only piece will come naturally. We'll be writing out to customers as and when. We've only announced it. We haven't designed the product yet. We haven't kind of officially launched it, but we announced it back in April that this is the product. This is what we're going to be doing. So once it's fully announced, we'll have more information, and we'll be writing out to customers saying, your turn to move. This is what's going to happen. This is what it's going to look like. But right now, I can verbally kind of tell you that, yeah, it's going to be 1 hour out of service. We swap you back in, job done. But customers generally don't have to worry about that for probably the best part of another year at the moment.
And then just a very quick question. For those customers of BT who don't have an email address, there are presumably other ways of contacting you. Not you, but
yes. So what we'll do is with this program, we've got a thing called a Digital Voice Advisory Group, or a DIAW for short, right? And it's full of charities. So Chris Grant, who's going to be coming on later, he's been to some of those sessions. But we've got Age UK are on there. You've got the RNIB, the RNID are on there. You know, all these different charities, and they kind of keep us on the straight and narrow. They advise us on the good things and the bad things to do. One of their piece of advice is to send everything via mail, because not everybody's got an email address. Not everyone can access email, so that's what we do. Everything goes via mail. So if you haven't got emails, you'll get it in the post. Don't worry.
Brilliant. So there will be possibly some time for some more questions to you after we've heard from the other speakers. Just to note that Jonathan Brain says that his parents are thrilled with the backup systems, so that's good. Great. So Geraint, for now, thank you very much. We're going to move on to Chris Grant, who's the community team lead from AbilityNet, who's going to debunk some of the myths that we may all be harbouring. So thank you very much, and let's hear from Chris.
Morning all. Apologies, technology fails me already this morning, and I can't get my camera activated on the mobile this morning because I'm out and about. But anyway, just to explain a little bit about why I'm here. So my name is Chris Grant, community team lead for the north of the UK. You can tell by my accent, not based in Wales, based up in a very crisp, cold Highlands of Scotland this morning. But my colleague Donna, who's the community team lead covering Wales, is on the call this morning too, and I'm led to believe she's come on before and kind of chatted about what the charity do, so I won't touch on that this morning in depth, but I'll just stay in to give you a bit of context. So for those that don't know, AbilityNet's a charity that help older and disabled people across the UK with technology for free through our volunteer service. And then actually in Wales in particular, in 2 areas, in Gwynedd and in general Wales, in fact, Cardiff and Swansea, through one of my colleagues, Lucy, through the BT Digital Skill Programme. Really come on this morning. I was going to kind of share some slides and I thought, no, I'm going to do it very ad hoc this morning and kind of talk through some of the kind of the things that I've heard and the ways that we've tried to demyth the whole part of digital voice, and Geraint's done a really good job of that. So I'll only touch on a few things he said. One of the biggest things that I would say is in regard to engagement, and I'm not just saying it because he's on the call, BT is probably one of the best that have undertaken this, and mainly through the engagement of the roadshow events that they've been putting on. AbilityNet have been part of them where we can provide volunteers to go along and speak to customers, and I've been able to go to some of that. I'll share some kind of little kind of stories with you. All I'm going to say too at the end of the call today, I am here to help you also. So I'll also make sure my email shared, and it's there just to give you kind of some guidance and some advice, because sometimes it's better actually to hear not from the the person you're purchasing your service through. Sorry, Geraint. But it's sometimes, I say, very good to get a neutral point. I've spoken to all of the ISPs now, so I've spoken to VMO2, and I've spoken to Sky at length, Sky's services mainly, digital voice anyway. But one of the things that when we go to these roadshows, and the roadshows are, as they've certainly opened my eyes, and the normal question I start with is, how do you feel about the switchover? And you hear people use the words such as petrified, scared, unsure, not knowing what's going on. And then at the end of that conversation, you ask them the same question and they say, is that all it is? And the reason being is because of what's been in the press. We're finding at AbilityNet a lot of myths, in particular that your phone number changes, which it doesn't. You need a new phone. You don't, because you've got the adapters, and I think one of the biggest parts from our side, and we see on a regular basis, is because of the clientele we support, is one person will say something that will then spread. And then that myth is kind of gone throughout. And one of the stories that was printed some time ago in a paper was, your landline is going. It's not going anywhere. As Geraint says, it's just the way that technology is changing. The other part of it is when we go to these roadshows, they say, they don't understand the technology, they don't understand the setup. Again, we are there to support the customer at the end of the day too, any provider. Long as they're over the age of 18 with a disability or over the age of 55, we'll try our best and help them, whether they just need, a little bit of setup or generalized kind of advice and information. And even when you're speaking to clients, your own people that you work with, if you don't feel that, you're best kind of to speak to them about it, drop me an email. I'm more than happy, as the colleagues are, like Don, I'm sure, we'll speak to customers about what it means, about trying to demystify exactly what's going on. Regard to the backup solutions that Geraint touched on too, again, we're speaking to a lot of customers, even outside of the roadshow events. They don't know what's out there. They don't know what's to offer, what's enabled. This is a free battery backup pack, or let's say the hybrid phone. I've heard really, really good things about the battery backup solution. And I noticed on the chat there were some people saying it, it kind of worked for family, which was great to see too. And I think that's, again, all ISPs are going to have to kind of start to look at if they've not. And actually at AbilityNet, we've set up a bit of a kind of small working group amongst some volunteers who've been attending these roadshows. And actually coming on Monday, we've got one, and we're going to be speaking to Ofcom who's the regulator, and a lot of the, I would say, attitude almost towards the switchover is that it's the provider that's, doing this. It's not, the Ofcom as the regulator has overall control. And I know some ISPs have come under fire with that, saying, well, it's BT making the data, it's TalkTalk, Sky, whoever. It's not, it's the regulator that looks after all of this at the same time. Just to get, I think, generally conclude is that I think if my ask to you today is, if you don't know, ask, because that's where the problem stems. One of our missions at AbilityNet is obviously to create a digital world accessible to all. I've heard customers who have said that they will switch away and stop using technology because of the PSTN switchover, which I can't understand. And I spoke to one customer actually the other day, not BT related, and he was quite, well, him and his wife were quite vocal to say, they're in their 90s, they feel they can't learn something new, and it would probably kind of tip them over the edge with technology. And I says, it doesn't, I says, just kind of, we're there to support someone within our own local community here. And I says, if it needs me to go and help them, so be it. I don't mind, because, particularly with winter coming up, a lot of people obviously depend on technology. And we don't want this to hinder their technology kind of follow-up. So as I say, my ask is ask the question to me. I certainly don't mind. And there is a final point, I promise, and then I'll open the questions. One of the other parts around it is the escalation process. And I would say that AbilityNet and BT have got a really good working relationship. And it's, we've had lots of meetings and calls and whatever. And as Geraint says, we've been part of the Digital Voice Advisory Group, which I've been to. And these meetings are fantastic. I've certainly enjoyed the ones that I've been to. We sit around the table with, as I say, with organisations like Age UK, RNIB, RNID, Stroke Association, etc. And we all talk about the people that we support. And one thing that I think screams out on a project like this is the word collaboration. And we all have to work together. And that's when I talk about the escalation process, because, we get a lot of customers that speak to us, and it's not always about digital voice. We take lots of queries about technology in general. However, if we get a customer that we feel that they've spoken to BT, that they've exhausted all avenues, as part of the digital voice group, we're part of an escalation forum. So we can actually submit an escalation to BT and say, here's a customer who's really struggling. They can't use technology, or whatever's gone on, or something's happened on the transfer, or there's a technical problem, etc. BT are very proactive in that. And I'm not just saying that, very, very proactive, to a point of sometimes it's same day or next day the escalations are picked up. We find if we submit in the morning, there's an it's 9 times out of 10 picked up, as I say, that day. But obviously the team are very, very busy, so we understand it, could take a couple of days. But in general, we've had really good outcomes from this. And again, it's about working together. If we don't work together, this is where the problems start to kind of creep in. And as I say, my ask to you this morning is to speak to each other about it. Familiarise yourselves on what digital voice means. So every provider is doing something a little bit different. Sky, you're already on VMO2, TalkTalk's not doing it right now. So we're speaking to these companies. So again, if you want to have a chat about it, reach out and say, I'll put my email in the chat. And actually, I'm going to just share something, and then I promise I'll open the question. We were in an event a couple of weeks ago with BT down in Birmingham. And one lady said to me, she says, I don't really want this. And I says, well, why not? And she says, I'm worried that I can't, if, for example, I have a heart attack, or if I take unwell, how am I going to call for help if I don't want it? and explained it to her. And you know something, she smiled at me and she says, thanks for that. She goes, no one's ever described that to me in that way. And it was an organisation locally, I'm led to believe, had said to her about digital voice and, oh, you know, she wouldn't be able to use her care alarm anymore, and it would all be kind of existent. I would say that organisation certainly had obviously read bits but not had read everything, and B, the biggest part of it is actually it's called scaremongering. And you know, we can remove that, and I'm sorry to use such a strong word of scaremongering, but that's what it is. And you know, we all say we work together, we make sure people are digitally included, we make sure people can use the switchover successfully. But I say open to questions, and yeah, as I say, please do ask away.
Chris, thanks very much for that very positive and helpful presentation. Again, we have got a couple of minutes for questions now, and then an opportunity a little bit after we've heard from Sarah as well. It strikes me that there are two things. The first is it would be really helpful to know for our members how they signpost people to AbilityNet. And then secondly, and I guess it's a question to both of you so far really, is clearly the Alliance membership is in contact with large numbers of people every day. Is there something that we can be doing through the network to be is there a simple leaflet that we could have to be giving to people as a way of disseminating the message that actually this is more straightforward than they might fear? So kind of in both directions, but perhaps just how do we signpost people to AbilityNet, Chris?
Yep. So again, I'll share it on the chat, and we'll put an email out with the details too. But it's simple through our website, so it's abilitynet.org.uk. I'll share Donna and my email, so you can reach out to either one of the two of us. You know, we all work very closely together, or we both work quite close. But we also have a referral form, so if you want to make a referral for, you know, any of the people that you work with, you can fill this in. It'll get picked up by our central administration team, who will then pass it on to the relevant volunteer in the area. And of course, we've got our free 0300 help or 0300 helpline, which is Monday to Friday 9 to 5. And again, we'll put the details on the chat for you. Regard to your other question, Hamish, about literature, there's a fantastic small E5 flyer, which is great and getting. It's the ones for the roadshow events I'm talking about. So I don't know whether we could get some of them electronic. Perhaps we've got the physical copies. I can, you know, I've got lots of them here. I can send them out. But if anyone wants the electronic copy too, I've also got that, so I could also forward on if you want, Geraint. I don't mind.
I thought that would be great, and I'm sure, Sarah, we could send that out to the network as well, just because it would help us get the message out, wouldn't it, for you? It would help you to get the message out. I think what I'm going to suggest we do is we move on to Sarah now, and then if people have got other questions for Chris, we can come back to them in the short Q&A session that we have after Sarah. So thanks for now, Chris. That was really helpful. And sorry we couldn't see you, but we heard you very clearly. And I'll hand over to Sarah Turvey-Barber, who's from Technology Enabled Care Cymru.
Thank you, Hamish. Sarah, are you able to share my presentation? We in the NHS, we are historically bad at using Zoom, I'm afraid, so it's crashed and all sorts. That's really, really helpful. Can everybody see that okay?
We can, but not yet in presentation mode.
And Sarah, there's a video on there, so you have to enable the sound, I think, on Zoom, don't you?
You do.
Yeah, we good to go?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks everybody for inviting me today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the tecCymru telecare programme and the impact on telecare services during the digital switchover. For those of you that know, it was scheduled for 2025 and now it's obviously early 2027, which gives everybody a little bit more time. I'm going to be really positive in this because I think we could dwell on the negatives and it is worrying for people, but there are lots of positives to be taken from this in terms of transformation and how we can better support people to live independently in the community. Just a little bit about tecCymru for those of you that don't know the programme. Welsh funded, we were sitting in an Iron Bevan. We are now moved over to the NHS Executive, which is probably a much better fit for us. We moved over on the 1st of September. So struggling between IT at the moment because we're still on an Iron Bevan. So that's another reason probably why to share, for Sarah to share the slides. And essentially, we have a vision to be the centre of excellence for all telecare related activity in Wales. We have very, very good relationships with all 22 local authorities in Wales, and we work with housing and the third sector. So the mission, as you see, is to help services modernise their delivery, which is part of obviously the digital switchover, by leveraging data and technology enable care. And we want really to move towards that more preventative position, because we've spent a long time historically working in a very reactive way. So somebody presses a pendant or has equipment and it's reacting to after an event, whereas we want to get better at actually trying to predict people's behaviour. So essentially try and reduce that risk of fall to stop somebody going into hospital, and obviously then the results from that. And you'll see we have those 8 commitments that underpin our strategy. Next one, Sarah, please. So strategic outcomes, it's a really busy slide. I won't go into it with you, but essentially this was all driven from the discovery piece that we did in 2021. That was a real collaborative piece of work that we did with all 22 local authorities, and we did speak to some housing associations, and we wanted to know where we needed to go in terms of the programme that had recently, been created. We had a 5-year programme, so wanted to talk to our stakeholders to ensure that we were actually helping the stakeholders and we were working together. And those 4 strategic outcomes are underpinned by the themes that we will look at now. And it's a step change in data exploitation. It's accelerating that convergence between health and care. We all know that we work very siloed in social care and health, and essentially you can't improve one system without improving the other. We know that. We want a more equitable and accessible, sustainable model for telecare. For those of us that are on the call that know telecare services, the cheapest in Wales is £2.20 for a basic service, and the most expensive at the moment is £7.21. So you get a feel for the difference there in terms of equitability and a postcode lottery. So we really do want to work with services to try and reduce that for the end user. Next slide, please. So these strategic themes, as I said, were driven by the discovery report we did in 2021. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them today because they're appropriate, which is about the digital migration and the engagement and collaboration piece that we've done. If anybody wants to talk to me about the other 2 themes, the data-driven and the optimum tech model, which is that moving towards a connected care platform approach, so moving really into proactive rather than reactive, I'll put my details in the chat. I'm always happy to talk to like-minded people and explain the programme in more detail, but I'll concentrate on the 2 themes today because of time. Next slide, please. And obviously the next one, so digital migration first. So you'll see that that's a map of Wales, and we've very helpfully put the alarm receiving centres on there. So there are 7 alarm receiving centres in Wales, and this is the real hub of what takes these calls from telecare and personal alarms in Wales. 22 local authorities contract to those 7 alarm receiving centres, and 2 local authorities contract to alarm receiving centres in England, but they are already digital, so that those local authorities are okay from that perspective. You'll see the green, well, it's turquoisey colour, isn't it? That is Carmarthenshire, the Vale of Glamorgan and Caerphilly. They've already all migrated to a cloud-based platform. And when we talk about a cloud-based platform, this is obviously information in the cloud, which is much more productive to working collaboratively. You don't have to work from a fixed building anymore. So it's going to aid recruitment into these services, because when it's a 24-hour service, if you can work from home, it's much, much easier for you to do so, isn't it? Rather than traipsing in and working at night in a building on your own. It will allow for local authorities to support each other in terms of disaster recovery, if anything went wrong, or if there's any staffing issues, or thinking in the past of areas of flooding. If there's been any localised areas, it will allow these alarm receiving centres to support each other. So it's a much, much better environment to work in. The orange is the North Wales partnership in Galagovel, which is a digital system, but it's an on-prem. So it uses traditional servers. So it doesn't allow itself to be as flexible as a cloud-based system, as you would imagine. And then we've got Cardiff actually going live this week. They're in the real testing, gritty end of it, so that they're really doing well. And then we've got RCT and Merthyr are literally left to go to the market, and we're supporting them to do that. Next slide, please. So this just gives you an idea, and it's a slide to look at afterwards, in terms of what we do to support those alarm receiving centres to actually move from that analogue world into a fully cloud-based digital world, which, as you can imagine, is challenging. There's a whole piece of work that needs to be done around data and governance, because we're working in a completely different way than we've ever worked before. You need to look at the cost of it. You need to look at that whole disaster recovery piece I've just talked about. You need to look at what equipment will work on various platforms. We've lived in a world for a long time that there was single providers that were really dominant in the market. So the equipment would work very well on their platform. It's not necessarily that world we're moving into now. So there's a lot more talk about interoperability and things having to work, which is a challenge for some of us to get our heads around. So there's lots of testing that needs to go live. And then that whole go live piece where you literally move people over, you test, because you don't want vulnerable people's equipment not to work. You have to fail back if it's, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. And then you obviously do a post go live, which is a lessons learned. We're getting really good at this now because we've taken 3 alarm receiving centres through. So it's really good to collaboratively share those lessons learned. You know, what went wrong is somewhere, it's quite likely to be the same problem in another local authority. So it's just really, really important and good to share that information and make sure that we learn from everything, isn't it, collectively? So next slide, please. Again, a very busy slide, but I'll give you a flavour. In-home equipment is actually, this is local authorities or private sector deciding what provider they will want to go with, and it's a minefield. The cost is prohibitive. It's double the cost of what analogue equipment was. There's there's a revenue cost to a SIM card, because traditionally analogue kit used people's analogue landlines in their property. That's not the case anymore. We've got a SIM in it, or we can use an Ethernet cable on some kit. So there's a whole cost issue to look at. There's a whole testing, making sure that it actually works on their partner's platform or their own platform if they have one. So there's a whole piece of work to do there around the governance, the procurement, the testing. And again, we're really supportive of local authorities if they want us to help them to do that, to choose that equipment, to make sure that it supports their end users as best as possible. Next slide, please. So this is the video that I wanted to play to you. We commissioned it for a couple of reasons, really. And the eagle eyes of you will see it says 2025 on there. I've had to go back and ask them to amend the date to 2027, which they're doing as we speak. And essentially, Chris and Geraint alluded to, obviously, there were people who were very vulnerable and very worried about this switch. And unfortunately, that opened themselves up to unscrupulous people that will take advantage of this. We've had instances where people have been written to and told them that their equipment is not going to work and they need to come over to this system immediately, and they'll help them, but there's an upfront cost. And what we really wanted to do is debunk that myth, because local authorities in Wales are very, very well versed in what needs to be done. Some of them have written to local authorities, and some of them have written to their end users to take a very proactive approach. Some are just going ahead and swapping out the equipment as quickly as they can to make sure everybody moves over. It's a really sort of hybrid approach. So we wanted to get the message out to the end user that don't panic. You know, there's lots of advantages to this, but, you know, we will support you and guide you through it. And the other thing we wanted to do is try and support the local authority that, let's be quite honest, quite hard to work in a local authority at the moment. Lots of pressure, reduced staff, reduced budgets. And this is a very hard piece of work for them. And we wanted them not to be inundated with calls from worried people, but also if the end person was considering changing their landline, it's really important that the service knows that they're doing that and they don't actually just move over to a new provider and then all of a sudden their equipment isn't working. So that was the reason we made the video. It's only a couple of minutes long, so I'd like to now play it, please.
You'll have to let me know if the sound works.
Okay.
In a world where communication is key, telecare has long been a vital lifeline for many, but change is on the horizon. Currently, when your telecare alarm system activates, your call is typically routed through the traditional analogue phone network to your alarm receiving centre. This is all set to change as the UK prepares for a huge technological upgrade. By the end of 2025, the historic analogue network will have reached the end of its life, and a new digital phone network is taking its place. But what does this mean for you, the telecare service user? Rest assured, whoever provides your telecare service is prepared for this change, and they will be in contact with you in due course. They will be able to advise you of the changes required to reflect the digital phone network. Openreach, which is a subsidiary of BT that runs the network infrastructure, is committed to helping communications providers and their customers have the smoothest transition from analogue to digital possible. They are working with local authorities, vulnerable community groups, and many other organisations to help them understand what is involved and how to ensure their service continues after migration. If you or your family are considering changing your telecommunications provider, please do this by using the number on your telephone bill. Also, please provide notice to your telecare service of your intention to do this. TSA, the National Body for Technology-Enabled Care Services, is already working with communications providers, Ofcom, and care regulators around the digital switchover. tecCymru is confident that the digitalisation of telecare services will offer huge opportunities both to you and service providers, and has offered support to all telecare services in Wales to facilitate as smooth a transition as possible.
Next slide, please, Sarah. I saw that somebody had asked in the chat if they could have the video. Yes, let me just get it altered to 2027 to make sure that it's obviously up to date, and then get it Welsh translated. And then obviously I'll pop that video over to you guys, because yeah, it's really helpful, isn't it? We've also got a slightly shorter one for people that want to put it over social media, because that's too long a video to do that, but we've had it condensed if people want to. I've talked a little bit about the current priorities, which are around supporting those alarm receiving centres. As I said, there are only 2 now that are using analogue art platforms. It's really important to do that, because until alarm receiving centres are digitalised, really the local authority people that provide that service to the end user cannot progress in a digital way. They could have a digital equipment out there that's going into an analogue alarm receiving centre, and that could cause issues. We want everything to be end-to-end digital as soon as possible. So we're about approximately half of local authorities have moved over to digital equipment. Some are speedier than others, as you can imagine. Some have got really good plans in place, which we're supporting them with. And that support is in on an ad hoc basis. I've done business cases for local authority. I've sat and written strategies with them. I've done testing of kit with them, but also I've just acted as a sounding base and brought people together if that's what they want. Some local authorities need different things to others, as you can imagine. And then we've looked at service redesign, which is back to that sort of visionary approach we want to take about that optimum care model of moving towards that proactive world where we stop people and hopefully that's the aim. We reduce the risk of falls, and we keep people safer in their own homes, because that is obviously where they want to be and should be. Next slide, please. And the next one. So this is the engagement and collaboration. We've got 5 key areas of focus. We need to improve the website. It needs to be able for local authorities to access chat functionality and be able to frequently ask questions and share processes and plans, or whatever they think is appropriate. It's quite limited at the moment. Unfortunately, it's much more customer facing than a secure login area, which we're working towards. We're doing a whole benefits piece that then local authorities, third sector, health, anybody can look at to see the real return on investment for these services and what we're actually doing to support people to remain living in their own homes independently. It's a whole governance piece of work we're doing, because obviously we're moving much more towards these cloud-based systems where we need to think about governance. The routine engagement I've talked about, we do it very well in Wales. It's the beauty of being a nation of 3 million people, isn't it? We're small enough to work together, and that whole collaboration piece, which is important to look outside of our programme. We worked very well with BT. All 22 local authorities have signed that data sharing agreement, same with Virgin, in the local authority areas that they're in. And that's really important, because that means we're protecting those end people in terms of we're not going to switch them over until actually BT are completely aware that they have that digital lifeline in place. We've done a whole collaboration piece with the TSA regarding industry advice and quality standards. And we just need to get really good. We are good, but we need to get as good as we can regarding sharing best practice and knowledge, because that's what will drive good and change, and it will mitigate risk. Last slide, please. So this is just the challenges. You know, I've talked a lot about the advantages and the blue sky thinking. There are clearly going to be challenges, and we just need to work through them, don't we, as we do really well in Wales. Lack of broadband and reliable mobile signal is challenging in some areas in Wales, and we work with local authorities. They might need to keep analogue kit in there. They might need, some providers are better in terms of the reliability of the SIM. Some equipment could use Ethernet and broadband, if that would be appropriate. So we just need to think about that and workarounds where possible. We need to think about readiness in terms of adopting the correct kit and making sure that it works with that alarm receiving centre. You don't want to go and spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds and find that the kit doesn't work very well. The collaboration piece is key. Learning from each other is going to be really, really helpful and important in this. You know, why do 22 local authorities all need to do something differently? They don't. They can share from each other and obviously drive best practice and transformation. And then that risk piece that we talked about, you know, the DSAs, the data sharing agreements, and working with industry to ensure that people are protected through this change, but they understand the positives of it, and they understand that it will eventually help them in terms of the service that they're going to end up having. Last slide, please, is just a thank you. I'll put my details in the chat, but anybody that wants to speak to me in the future about the programme, I'm more than happy to do that. And obviously, when those videos are updated and translated, I'll share them with you as well.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. So we've got just a couple of questions. The first was there's just to check what the email address, the URL that you gave us. So digitalhealth.wales seems to be the Life Sciences Hub website.
Oh, right, okay. I'll put that in the chat. We are hosted by DIAW. Yeah. So at the moment, the website is got that URL on it, but I'll put that in there.
Fine. Okay. So that's yeah, it just needs correcting. There's a question which I guess is probably best dealt with by Geraint from Jonathan, which is this potential confusion that as with the BT-EE merger, that people are being migrated to BT, they think, but they're ending up on EE, and they're worried about that. Anything, Geraint, you can say about that?
Well, the BT group is actually 3 companies. It's BT, EE, and PlusNet. So, and what you'll find is PlusNet won't actually be doing any landline service moving forward. So if you're on PlusNet, you have to leave them, and you can join BT, EE, or another provider. When it comes to the brands BT and EE, in the future, as a residential customer, everybody will be on EE, and they won't be on BT. But that's coming down the line, and BT will just be for business customers. In this process, we're not moving people onto EE unless they agree and kind of sign up to it and say, yeah, great, I'll go with an EE deal, because we're offering people EE, BT, whatnot. If people are game and they're happy to sign up to EE, then we move them across. Otherwise, during this kind of migration process, it's you keep the same brand, you stick with who you are. But with a full fiber installation, for example, that is a new contract, someone's happy, agreed to upgrade, and would have accepted an EE changeover as part of the deal. I'm extremely confident of that being the case. If anybody would like to challenge me on it, no issues at all. Contact me separately and we can listen to the calls, and I'm sure that would be the case.
Okay, I think that's also that. So well, thank you, Sarah, very, very much indeed for explaining all that. And it's really encouraging, I think, to hear the way that the three of you are clearly all working closely together, which is great. And also some very exciting things happening on the technology-enabled care front as well, and migration to digital and a bit more resilience, which is also good to know. I think that probably takes us to our opportunity for a bit of breakout. So what we're going to do in just a second is to move people into breakout groups, as we always do. I think we're very much hoping that you might share with us both your kind of own experiences of this in the real world, what you're hearing from the clients and colleagues that you support in terms of digital inclusion, their anxieties, but also the reality of how it's all going. And then we will. We're not going to formally capture that, but I think if there are any key themes that come from it, what we'll do is perhaps share those with Geraint and Chris afterwards, in case there's something you can particularly help us with. And then we're going to come back in about 20 minutes and just hear a little bit about an evaluation of the alliance that is going on. But thank you very much indeed to all three of our speakers for really helping set the scene and hopefully allaying some of the concerns that you either had or you've been hearing from your customers. So Sarah, can I ask you to work your magic in Zoom and send us to our breakouts? Thank you. Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I think we have people coming back into the room. That's really good. Thank you. Well, I hope you had a good discussion. We had a really good discussion in our group, and I think for Geraint and Chris, there are a couple of quite useful things that came out of that. So I'll make sure that we pass that on to you in due course.
There are also a couple of comments in the chat, which I'll share with Geraint and Chris and Sarah.
Yes. Good. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, we'll summarize kind of some of the key themes and get back to you. But I think the general point from our group was, I think there are opportunities for the membership of the Alliance to help you with the dissemination of this message. And we were thinking also specifically around the opportunity for those people who work with children, for example, and younger people, for them to be providing the message into their grandparents and parents who might be anxious as a way of getting that intergenerational messaging as well. So to round off what's been a really good meeting, so thank you everybody. Sarah's just going to give us an update about an evaluation that's been conducted. Old Bell 3 is the company who are doing the evaluation, for those who are puzzled by the agenda. But Sarah's going to tell us all about it.
So Old Bell 3 is a research company, and they're conducting the formal evaluation of Digital Communities Wales on behalf of the Welsh Government. And this includes an evaluation of the Alliance. I've just put a link in the chat. Normally we do a live survey in these meetings to do with what priority we're talking about. This time we're going to be asking you to, so if you could click on the link and fill out the survey. It's really important that we get the views of the network into Old Bell 3. The funding for DCW and technically DIAW, because that's who funds me, is coming to an end in June 2025. And this evaluation is really important to help us sort of evidence the importance of the Alliance and hopefully support us to continue past that point. So it's really important the network fills this out, lets them know how wonderful the Alliance is and how important it is. So if you could just take a few minutes now and complete the survey, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Old Bell 3 are really keen to. They've interviewed the steering group members, but they're really keen to get as much feedback as possible. They're obviously reviewing more broadly, but it includes the role of the Alliance. So that would be good. And then I would suggest that some of the stuff in the chat, for example, about today's meeting is an example of how the Alliance really adds value, but I'll leave you to do the survey. Okay, please you don't need to stop filling in your survey form. That will still work once we come out of Zoom. But thank you. So hopefully it was helpful to give you a little bit of time to get going on that, so that we get it completed. Can I just begin to close the meeting? I'd like to thank all three of our speakers who really, I think, have set the scene very nicely and helped our understanding of this very important changeover, which is impacting all of us in Wales. So not just about. So thank you very much to them, for Geraint and Chris and Sarah, for the clarity of your presentation and helping us to keep to time too. So thank you for that. And thank you, all of you, for offering to be contacted afterwards too, because we will be we'll be feeding some stuff back to you and asking you questions, I'm sure. But also, I do sense a real willingness across the Alliance to try and help you as well. So if there are things we can do to get messages out, we would be really pleased to do so. Thank you, as always, to Sarah for organising the meeting, and for all of you for your very active engagement in it. It's a real joy to come to these meetings, so thank you. And we'll see you again next time. So thank you very much indeed, and keep filling in your survey if you haven't quite finished. Hannah looks like she's writing a short novel. I don't know whether a lot of typing going on, but please do put all your thoughts down, and then we will those be shared with OB3 as part of the review. So thanks very much, everyone, and see you next time.